Okay, hello everybody. This is Catherine Barnes. I'm here with the Wonderful Being podcast where we talk about music, theater, and whatever else I feel like talking about. And I'm so excited today because the Hollywood Fringe Festival is in full swing, and I have some new friends here who are all part of the production team for Our American Tragedy, which is a show all about it's a show about a show that was happening when President Lincoln got shot. Wow, some heavy stuff. And I am so excited because I don't know, if you're on YouTube, you will see them. They are young people who are telling this old story. Usually it's just old people who want to tell these stories. So I'm so excited about this. Let's go around and introduce everybody. Let's start with Angelique.
Hi, everybody. My name is Angelique, and I'm one half of Sunny Gingham. We're not a little company. I'm not allowed to say little. Me, along with Matt and our friend Nick, wrote Our American Tragedy, and then Matt and I have produced it and are starring in it. So I am an actor that plays Laura Keene in the show.
And who's Laura Keene?
Laura Keene was a woman during that time who was one of the leading actors, I would say, in the country. Probably she was a touring performer, and the evening of that performance, it was her benefit show. So she was getting all the ticket sales for that performance. So her name was advertised a lot in programming and stuff.
So she's a real person.
Yes, every character in the show is from history. They're all
My
real.
God. I love it. Okay, next up.
Hi, I'm Matt. I'm the other half of Sunny Gingham, the production company, and I play Harry Hawk, who also, like Angelique said, is a real person, who was Laura Keene's touring partner at the time. And so they were on this tour of the show Our American Cousin that was happening at Ford's Theater that night, and he played the lead in Our American Cousin. Asa Trenchard was the character he played. And he was physically on stage when Booth jumped off of the balcony and landed onto the stage after he made the shot. So he kind of saw Booth face to face when it happened.
Wow. Oh my goodness. Man,
Yeah.
why do they never talk about this in school?
I know, they made it extra boring.
Super. It's like very point A, point B done in school, and it's kind of strange.
Oh, it's super strange. Well, I'm glad you guys are filling in the gaps. Let's get our last introduction here, which is the director.
Hi, I'm Jack Filsinger. I'm also a real figure from history. Just kidding. I am a writer, and I guess now director based out of LA.
Yes, he is.
Yeah, I met Angelique and Matt a couple years ago. And this is our my first collaboration with them and Sunny Gingham. I'm super excited to talk about this like awesome show that's, like you said, a really cool slice of history that nobody really talks about.
Definitely. So let's start here. Where did the idea to do this come from?
I'll let you take that one.
Sure, yeah. So, I'll speak for myself. I've always been very into the Lincoln era, Abe Lincoln himself, the Civil War, like just that time in history, that like development for America at that time. And so that's just always been a topic of history that I've always been interested in. And super long story short, Angelique's fiance at the time, now husband, was doing a project with a collector, and one of the items the collector had was a ticket stub untorn from that night at Ford's Theater.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so he came to me knowing that I was into Lincoln and all of that, and was asked me if I knew anything about the show that they were watching, and I actually didn't, and I was a little disappointed to admit that as a Lincoln fan. And so
Fake Lincoln fan.
Yeah, fake. Immediately we both were like, "What a cool idea for a show to do a show about the actors trying to put on that show." And we just kind of that little moment, and we were just like, maybe that's our Fringe show, because we were we didn't have a Fringe show, but we were doing Fringe. We knew we were doing Fringe, and we were like, we don't have a show. So we were like, what if that's it? And the research just started. The concept started flowing. We had like a shared notes app that we were just like, what if this happens? What if this person says this? And it started as fictional characters because we just knew nothing. So it was like, okay, we'll have, actor Mary Jane and actor Joe Schmo, and they're mad about, that their performance got interrupted and whatever. And then, we found some incredible research, and it just kind of wrote itself from there.
Really quick. So sorry. Do you mind if we pause really quick? I clicked the wrong button.
Oh,
madam. Tell him to stop. Stop. You're doing it wrong. So if I could just pause really quick.
Sure. Yeah, we'll pause for just 1
You
second.
don't have to pause on here. I just wanted to.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to give you, if you have to use our audio, I don't want to give you shitty audio. So
It's okay. It's no big deal.
I just want to make sure. I didn't know what your process was, so I just wanted to make sure.
No.
I wasn't screwing you just in case.
Do what you got to do.
Thank you. I know this is very annoying. Okay, 1 second. Sorry, Matt. This was me. Because I noticed while you were talking. That's why we switched mics. I was like, it's not picking up anything that he's saying.
I'm hearing him okay on my end.
It was on audition where he couldn't be heard.
It did kind of sound like like when Matt was talking, it was like Angelique's mic was just picking him up, like that she was holding, not just like the one right in front of his face.
Right. All right. Sorry, guys. I know we're on a time crunch. Test. All right. Go on.
That sounds better.
We're good.
Yeah. So we dove into research, and concepts changed, and we found out all of these historical characters or I guess people, not characters, and just fell in love with their stories, fell in love with this idea that so much happened that night, that week,
Totally.
after the event that's just not talked about. And so we were like, let's be the ones to talk about it.
And it took a huge shift because we really wanted to skew comedy. But then after all that research, it was like, oh, there's so much like real intense things that happened. And it isn't just like talking about Booth and Lincoln. It's very much like people that we just would not know existed, that lost to history otherwise. So it was really fun switching gears in that sense.
Wow. So I was going to ask two things. One is about like the research process and what was that like? But I think before we go there, like what percentage of the play would you say is like historical fact, and like what percentage is historical fiction?
We really pushed ourselves to stick to the facts. I would say as far as fiction, we have played with a little bit of timing that evening, I think. Like,
yeah,
'cause-
I mean, yeah, like timeline, obviously you're fitting what might have been,
like a
I don't know, 12 hours, a 16-hour day into 45 minutes. So, obviously some creative choices there. And then I guess the only other thing would be also choosing 7 people to focus on when there were 47 plus people backstage at the time being detained. And so, you have to combine a little bit. Maybe you love this quote from somebody that was backstage, but they're just not a character in the show, and you want to get it in, so you give it to somebody that feels justified to say it, kind of thing.
We played with that a little bit.
But as far as the events, as far as the people, who they are, their relationships to the theater, to Booth, to each other, and their tracks that night, I would say maybe close to 95% historically accurate. I don't want to I don't know,
a mathematician, but maybe 90.
Well, you have to get the right number or else
someone's
gonna come after us. Maybe 95 is high. Maybe 95.
I think 88. I was gonna say 87, and then I panicked when I saw you say 8. So 88% accurate. I would say, because we all grew up knowing so little about this event, when we really realized that we really wanted to I don't want it to feel like a history lesson, and I really don't think it does. Jack can comment on it, but definitely I wanted people to leave the show being like, no way that happened. What? And after our preview performance on Saturday last week, that exact thing happened. I had friends coming up to me saying like, I didn't know this. Was that true? This and that. And when I would say something like, oh, like that line is actually a quote from history, we didn't write that part, their minds would be blown. And so we probably have a solid 3 moments, maybe 4. It might be 4. No, it is 4 at least, of like direct quotes, like testimony quotes that we then curated into our script so that it's a natural thing for our written character to say, but it's actually taken from them in history as well.
I think what's cool too is that like obviously what you don't when you're writing something like this, like you don't want it to be like edutainment, like you want it to feel like, artistically captivating and interesting. But what obviously like what I think Matt, Angelique, and Nick did with this is that it's like it feels like it is super true to the essence of the event, and like obviously dramatic license is always taken, but to your guys' point, it's like the historical accuracy comes in the form of, yes, these people were real, yes, some of them were amalgamated, or we couldn't focus on all 47, but these people were real, this is true to their experience of that night. And when people ask about like what's true, what's not, more often than not we can be like, well, that's true. We're not saying like, oh no, we made that up, or like that's fabricated. It's just about it. I would say most of what has been dramatically licensed in this material is just all about streamlining because it's a 45-minute show.
Totally.
Right. And it's interesting that you talk about that this is taking place. You said it's like 16 hours or something condensed into, I'm assuming the show's 1 hour because it's a Fringe show.
Yeah, it's 45 minutes.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
Kept her tight.
Yeah.
Wow. That's smart in a Fringe environment. But, I was talking with, I don't know if you guys know Shelley Cooper, who's doing...
we chatted with her on IG Live like 2 weeks ago. She's the best.
Oh, I love it. Yeah, but I was talking with her about her show about Jenny Lind, and she was saying that when she does a historical one-person show, she's always trying to keep it to like one evening, like an actual evening that happened. And so that's really interesting that you guys are saying basically the same thing.
Yeah.
And her show is only, I think, like between 12 and 20 years earlier than ours, if I'm not mistaken.
She said like 1855, 1850
so less.
something.
We're 1865.
Oh my God. So then going back to the research part of it, like, because I get big theater people vibes from everybody that I'm talking to. So I'm wondering.
I feel a little insulted, actually.
Honestly, it takes one to know one. Okay, so but what I was wondering is like, you guys are probably not professional historians. So like, what was the process like of researching this? And then from the director's standpoint, like, do you have a dramaturg? Like, what's going into the accuracy of the production?
Go ahead, Jack.
I mean, we have an awesome dramaturg named Emma, who's fantastic and saved my life on more than one occasion. There's in terms of like, obviously Matt and Angelique did like the brunt end of the research just by writing it and creating this like awesome script. Emma really helped us understand, I think, a couple of like really important pieces of context that are not things that necessarily come out explicitly in the play, but I think for the keen audience member, really hopefully like sing. The Laura Keene audience member.
I was like, I don't know what he's doing, but I like
it. That's a little Easter egg. Emma really gave us a lot of insight into the politics of the day and like the socioeconomic status of these characters and how that would inform their politics, because obviously I think a lot of what this play is what's really interesting about this piece is that you have people on both sides of the Civil War debates and abolition. You have people from the North and people from the South, and who are all detained at the same time. And Emma really helped us dive into, again, the class status of these characters and how that would inform their politics of the time, and how that informs basically the sort of human behavioral element of this piece. And I think that's honestly why it's like so resonant today. And she also helped us understand a lot about like etiquette and manners, and helped with our costume design elements, and what pieces people would wear inside, what pieces would wear outside. So she really filled in a lot of those because obviously when you read material on this type of history, you tend to get a lot of like broad strokes facts, and not a lot of, you don't get all of those like juicy details that make characters feel real and alive, and she really helped just fill in those blank spots for us. Yeah, does that answer your question? Sorry.
Oh no, it definitely does. I love that you guys used a dramaturg, and I always trust productions more that have one, especially when it's historical. So that's really, really cool. And I'm asking about the research, but before we go there, you all told me that you made the decision to do Fringe before you even had an idea for a show. So I'm wondering, like, how long did it take to write this?
Well,
Not long enough.
Not long enough. So we had brought a show to Fringe last year. I don't know if we would have made the decision had we not done it already. I think we were able to. Oh, did I unplug? No, right. We were able to be relieved of that, like, oh God, what is there to expect? Am I prepared enough? How does this work? Because we had brought a 22-minute show last year to Fringe, and it was way smaller as far as scope. So I think we kind of like Fringe ended in 2023, and we were like, we're coming back next year. We don't know with what, but we're coming back. So I don't think there was really an option to not, because we always knew we would, and we wanted to work with Theater Asylum again with Matt and Berta. So we kind of just started chatting about a concept truly in November, December. I think this concept materialized in December, like late December, because you were in Pennsylvania for Christmas. And then I was in the process of getting married. I got married in March. So there was and he was my officiant.
Oh my God. Wait, pause. So you got married in March, and now it's June and you're doing a Fringe show. Wow. You're crazy.
Angelique is a multi-hyphenate. She's a writer bride.
Thank you. And you're a writer officiant.
Yeah.
So we both had lead roles in March.
Yeah.
And it was a lot to focus on.
There was a day where we got together and we were like, we have to take March off. We can't keep writing. We can't keep working on
Fringe.
And
the show was supposed to be done before the show.
Be a day of writing and then like a week of not, and then I would like text an idea and then it would be like, sure, yeah, that sounds good, and it's just too broken up because this wedding had to take priority, and so we really, like, I would say,
our last show we were
try not to sound so bitter, Matt, about the wedding.
The wedding took priority.
The wedding really took over our lives.
The wedding where everyone got to stare at him for 20 minutes.
Incredible Abe Lincoln show somehow took the back burner. But no, we decided, like, it's just not, it's not good for the wedding and it's not good for the writing process to
really why
try to
came on.
do both. Yeah. And
fabulous additions.
So I guess writing time really, like, concept in December.
I got married on March 24th, which was a Sunday, and we met up and got a lot of work done that Friday.
Yeah.
So the 28th maybe of March, and then finished
January, February we were writing, a little bit of March, and then April and May, and we finished the script probably the day or two before the first day of rehearsal, and came down to just these actors need a script to come into. We can't we have to show up with something. And the nice part about being the writers and also being in the show is that there's a grace period. You show up with a draft and it just gets to develop as you put it up on your feet. And everybody kind of has a hand in it at that point. And
and they've all been very patient with let's change the to right there. Good.
And then, we knew how important it was to do a table read with friends and public and get feedback. And so there was a lot of that and those sessions going on and sending scripts out. We sent a script out, I think, to Jack as well before we brought him on.
He was in our table read review.
So a really short writing process, which is scary when you're dealing with this kind of material, because you just want it to be good. You want it to be accurate. You want it to work.
5 other people depending on us, acting wise.
But I will say it was a really prolific writing process at that. I trusted it, and I trusted the people that we were working with. I trusted the feedback we were getting, and trusted the rehearsal process, and we ended up in a really great spot, I think.
Well, Jack, you might be able to comment on that, because I think I called you or texted you like the day before our table read because I was like, who do we know that's smart, that is a writing person? And then I was like, oh my God, Jack, we didn't invite Jack. So I messaged you and you were like, yeah, I'm free. And so you heard what is like not even close to the show anymore. So how was
Yeah,
it for you to hear what you heard on, like, I think it was like the first week of April or second week of April, to then when you came on officially as a director?
well, that's what I was gonna say is like, honestly, I feel like you guys are like really underselling like how much like you're making. Oh, like we just like threw it up, or whatever. I'm like, no, like I
And I'm like,
saw
let's see what happens.
Jack, that's what
yeah,
it feels like. I feel like I wrote it yesterday.
right, totally. I mean, I feel it because like I went to one of their table reads for it and like was part of like the sort of, I guess like that would probably be like the first like big round of feedback that you guys did, I would assume.
Yeah, it was.
And then you guys sent it to me again with those revisions, and I think I gave you like one other like some other feedback on top of that. So like Matt and Angelique and Nick went through like multiple rounds of this script, and there's so many different ways, obviously so many different ways into this story, and obviously I think they found the best one. But yeah, it's by no means was the writing process like, it was rushed but not, I don't think we lost any like detail, in that.
Careless.
Exactly. Yeah, it was, everybody who gave feedback at that table read session, and everybody, and every version I've seen after that, it's really just been about like this. Clearly, I think everybody said this at the table read, and I said this to you guys too. It was like, this obviously has legs. This is like obviously will work. It's just about like being willing to like this is such a stupid reference, but like, do you know that meme of like the miner who's like going through the rock and there's like diamonds on the other side, but he like gives up right before? It's like that, it's just like you have to just keep pushing it and revising and revising and revising. I don't know if anyone's ever heard this before, but it's like writing is rewriting. I think I just made that up actually. But like that's really what I think was the key to this process, is just finding that like that diamond version of this, and I think that's obviously what we settled on.
Wow, that's impressive, because often I think if I'm taking a show to Fringe, I feel like the Fringe process itself is chiseling through that rock. So that's cool that you're like, oh, we're at diamond status, like
Listen, I don't want to sound like braggy or anything, but I think
no
also
brag.
Our actors are also like really fantastic and like contributed a lot. I know some of them were at that table read too, right, Matt and Angelique? So
I think every single person we cast was at that table read, but Halo was reading stage direction for us that day.
Right, that's
that
sort of
role cast.
But yeah, like they all, I think in a lot of ways there's sort of a devised element going on with this piece, and that like everybody who ended up having a hand in it like gave notes on it at some point, so it was super collaborative in that way.
Wow, that's impressive. And so when you were doing the actual research, because you were talking about like testimony, like what were you looking at? Were you looking at like court documents? Were you looking at like letters? What kinds of sources were you using?
Yeah, so I mean, just really like anything that we can come up with just on the internet, searching
with such little time
this event. But it's kind of funny. I remember just like looking up, like information from like backstage at the Lincoln assassination, and like a book titled Backstage at the Lincoln Assassination came up. And I was like,
which I still have to return to you guys. I realized. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, my bookshelf has been rather empty.
I'm so well. I assume as the number one Lincoln fan, that's the only book you have on your bookshelf.
Torturing your actor.
And so I was like, well, duh, like I'm getting that.
Well, that book is the reason why we're no longer a comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But so, I mean, that book really became one of our like key research pieces.
Yeah.
And I mean, it just dives into everything. I mean, the detail is just mind blowing. And he's a professor,
Thomas A. Bogar.
Yeah, he's a professor and theater historian. He specializes in presidents at the theater, which is really niche. But so I trust the guy, and so on top of that, we were able to contact the Lincoln Library. I actually contacted the author of the book to clarify some things that were in his book. He was really kind and it responded right away. I contacted some Lincoln museums in Springfield, Illinois, and
Oh
just
my
like
God.
really, really, really dove in, because I think honestly having that fire under us of such a short timeline, I was like, I just don't want to miss anything. I want to make sure I'm getting this right. And so if reaching out to these people and shooting my shot and
Even
asking
if they
these
don't
questions
answer,
is something I have to do, I'm going to do it. And it was really awesome.
everyone's so nice. And I think because of this like streamlined process that we had, having Emma as our dramaturg, I think really balanced out what we did, because we did a lot of what Matt said, reaching out to different entities and looking through a few books, but not nearly as much as I think we could have had we had 2 years to write this, for example. And
Mhm.
Emma is a wizard. I think she read 5 books about the event in like 5 days or something. She's a really fast reader, super photographic memory. So she came in after we hired her like 2 weeks later and had an entire presentation laid out and really dug deep as far as like how is America looked at by other countries in this period. Like she really chose some fascinating angles that I hadn't considered. Like I wasn't thinking about England's perspective on Lincoln's presidency, for example. And so she gave us some really invaluable um, perspective that I don't think would even had crossed our minds initially. So that her side of the research process really rounded out what we were doing
Well, and that would be relevant because Laura Keene was English, right?
fully. So you
Okay.
would think that I'd be like, I wonder. But totally, it's especially being the baby brother to England and looking at how young America is as a whole, it was such a fascinating perspective. Like she was saying that he was in newspapers, would be published as, or written as called Julius Caesar, and was seen as quite the almost a dictator. Like he was seen as extreme.
This is why we need a dramaturg.
Yep, because I theater degree, no English, but
Well,
things like that. It's really relevant. I was like, I didn't know Lincoln was looked at that way.
oh, and to be fair, I mean, he did dictate. Well, this is hard to say, but I mean, like, I know he went in, for example, in the state of Maryland and did a lot of things just to keep them from seceding. It was completely dictatorial, but he was just like, nope, we're going to come in here and we're going to do this because I'm so sorry, the Capitol's here and you can't secede, right? So
Right.
that's a fair analogy in some ways.
Totally. And it was it's fascinating. I really like it. Like knowing about it, at least.
I'm wondering, I want to ask Matt, like, what was it about Lincoln that like got you obsessed and that whole time period?
And how old were you?
I was young. I mean,
Is this like Matt Lore backstory that I'm getting right
this
now?
really is.
Jack, you guys are getting closer today.
I mean, I
fast.
don't know. I've always been into history as a whole, and especially early American history. I've always been fascinated with like the development of this country and kind of like digging up what we're not told. You know, because there's a lot of that. And so I don't know. I mean, I think the Civil War is a fascinating era to look at somebody that just has that on their shoulders, that has to deal with that, is just kind of incredible. I liked that he was not really political. He was, you know, this kind of homegrown guy who, you know, just really just a young everyday guy who, you know, a hard worker like that, you know, I guess that American kind of guy at the time, but was just so passionate about being educated, understanding the system, and like just educating himself, and became this like iconic iconic figure in our development as a country. And so I was just fascinated by that. And it probably started like as a kid, just thinking he looked cool too. Like he just looked different. He had the
No
top
one
hat.
with
He was
hats
like,
like that.
73 feet tall. It was like, oh
Well,
yeah,
Lincoln is like one of the most like mythological presidents that we
Right.
have,
And so
right?
Great way to put
I
it.
think like at a very, very young age, I was probably just fascinated by that figure. But just like growing up and like kind of doing my own research outside of school and like really digging, just became really fascinated with that era and that presidency. And I remember I had to have been like, I don't know, like 17. And I like bought
2 years ago.
I went to this like local bookshop and I bought the Lincoln Douglas debate transcript and just like read it for fun, which is like so boring. But I was just fascinated, and so it's just been something that I've always just been really into.
Hyperfixations on history, or like if people, I love to ask people like what they're like, what's your number one like thing that you can't like let go of. I have my family.
What's your Roman Empire?
Well, it's the what's my Roman Empire joke. My family has a version of that, which is we are like, if you have a particular era of history that you're fascinated with, we always joke that it's like, oh, that must have meant that you lived during that time and you've been reincarnated and now you're like fascinated by your own history.
I would love to believe that I'm Lincoln reincarnated, but that's a big hat.
I think you're probably Booth reincarnated.
I was actually going to ask, is Booth a character in the show at all, or has Booth pieced it by the time that the actions are taking place of your show?
Yeah, Booth is gone. We start literally like moments after the shot. Lincoln's also not a character in the show.
They're both Booth is represented in the show in some ways, but not played on stage by an actor.
Yeah, and same with Lincoln. His arrival to the theater is referenced, and we have this moment where we acknowledge him arriving, but there's no actors playing either role, and we're passionate about that.
We talked about that a lot.
That angle, just because that's the information that everybody knows, right? So if we can kind of get them out of the way real quick and acknowledge it, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. Everyone can fill those gaps because it's what we all know, and then we can really highlight everything we don't know without wasting any time kind of reiterating information that we've kind of been learning for our whole lives.
Totally.
Also in a post like Steven Spielberg Lincoln era, like it's so gauche. Like it's too ridiculous to like portray Lincoln in like a direct way like that. So it's like, I think you guys are like we're like also like on board with that. It's like, oh yeah, don't put Lincoln in this show. That would be crazy.
We don't have Daniel Day-Lewis money, so why bother?
Yeah.
Well,
he's retired anyway, so.
Oh, is he? I didn't get the memo.
I think he's retired, or
I feel like
he's
it's
probably
a
like
marketing stunt.
It's probably like Miyazaki, where he'll be like, oh yeah, I'm retired. Just kidding. Oh no, I'm really retired now. Just kidding. Oh no, I'm super retired now. JK.
Well, I was going to say, in some ways, it's more powerful not to have the two most obvious people be characters. Like the absence of them, I think, is pretty powerful in and of itself. So I think that's a cool technique that you guys used.
Totally agree.
I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about like, how is this show relevant to like what's going on politically now? Like, did you experience any kind of parallels as you were doing the writing?
I feel like that came to light really during the rehearsal process. I think having so many eyes on because it's like we fly too close to the sun. We've been working with it for so long. Sometimes it's easy to like, forget a moment is deep or not realize how poignant it is. And I think, Jack, it was probably you early on in the rehearsal process being like, this is relevant, this is topical. And I'm like, is it? And it is. I think there's a lot of parallels to our politics and social standings that we're dealing with today. I don't know if you have more to add to that, Jack.
I mean, I'm going to say something super bold. I think I'm the only person to have this idea, but I think we live in pretty divisive times. I think we can all agree. Obviously, like our political landscape is super divided, right? And it's divided pretty 50-50, or, that's sort of the, we could debate the merits of that all day long, but like we have two parties and two teams, and we're just playing kickball with a series of checks and balances every 4 years, and obviously I think, Matt and Angelique, I think you guys sell yourself short. Like you guys picked probably the other most divisive time in America where it was like truly 50-50.
Yeah.
Maybe second only to like the actual Revolutionary War, where it's like loyalists versus, rebels, but
it's not as domestic.
The Civil War, obviously, it's like, come on, it's hitting the nail right on the head in terms of how divisive that period was versus now. And what I think is really to me, what is like the most amazing part of this show and what got me so fascinated from a directorial standpoint is that it captures all that divisiveness, but not in the way that I think a lot of, frankly, like really annoying pieces of art capture divisiveness, which is like there's a hard right and a hard wrong. And like obviously, with this show we're representing characters who were likely anti-abolitionists, and like that is wrong. But what is so interesting about the way that these characters are portrayed in this show is that we're really getting to the nitty-gritty of why this country has, like, the fact that this country has always had a divisive history, and that trying to ignore that divisiveness is like just as destructive. And I think that's what's really relevant about it from a contemporary viewpoint, is that it's that thing of like every generation thinks the world is going to end, and like their generation, it's like people have been prophesizing the end of days since forever. It's the same joke as like theater has been dying for 1,000 years, and it's like hasn't died yet. um and I think it's really easy for us to be like, our country has never been so divided as it is right now. And at its core, what this play does is show it's like, no, this country has always been super, super divided. And it's not a phenomenon.
To look at what degree people go to make a statement, to support their side, to make sure that whatever they're in support of is recognized, is noticed, and has an effect. And so I think in modern day we are a little desensitized, and it feels a little like old American folktale to hear about the Lincoln assassination, because you know one guy gets shot by one guy, and unfortunately in this day and age that's just something that we hear. And so to hear that, like, you don't think about the weight that that has on the country and that those people at that time, but it shook the nation, and it was somebody reacting to an outcome to a war, an outcome to politics that they did not agree with, that they were not happy with, and they did something extreme. And we have obviously January 6th to look at, and we have this insurrection that even in a desensitized society that shook us. It took something so huge, and this reaction to an election, a reaction to these political decisions being made, for somebody to go, no, this is what we believe in, and we're going to let you know in the most extreme way possible, so and that to me is really like, that's what Booth is doing in this moment. Is, I'm protecting myself, I'm protecting my livelihood too. Lincoln
principally for him
took away people's livelihood by the decisions that he made, and we know now that's the right side of history. But at that time, people's survival was at stake. Having slavery end, that was their business. And so for Booth, and not to come across as though I'm justifying him, but he did what he had to do to support his side, to support his beliefs, and went the extreme route. And I think we see that now, especially in our politics, is people really doing the unthinkable just to make sure that they're heard.
Yeah, it's the psychology of like the silent, this whole mythology of like the silent majority, that we have in this country, and like understanding where that psychology comes from, and the fact that that psychology is, again, not a contemporary phenomenon. Like, it's not something that is singular to 2021, or 2022, whatever. It's and like that election cycle, it's something that has like like, not to just put such a like dumb fine point on it, but like this type of like divisiveness and psychology is like as American as apple pie, right? It's just like, this is something that has always been a factor in this country. And I think, yeah, like to your point, Matt, like Booth is such an interesting mythological figure through which to like examine that. And I think that's hopefully what comes across in this show.
Well, I find it interesting because, it's that concept that we learn, studying theater and writing and stuff like that. Like, a villain never believes that they're a villain. They don't think that. And, he was on the side of history at that time where you're being seen as a rebel. And we have, these in modern society, we have these references of like the Rebel Alliance in Star Wars. You have these elements in Star Trek. We're also in a society that pushes like you need to push up against the big man as the underdog. And in that war, the South became the underdog, I think, towards the end. It's a fascinating thing seeing someone at only 26 trying to fight for the perspective that he felt was correct, and obviously don't agree with it. It was such an extreme take, but also I think he did something that I think he felt like would obviously garner a response, because this was the first, you could argue, like this is the one of the earlier terrorist attacks in America. It was the first president to ever be murdered. So how Matt was saying, we're kind of desensitized to that, but it took the insurrection to kind of ruffle our feathers and get us to notice. Like at the time, this has that same level of shock value. And so I always, as a writer, found that really fascinating, because it didn't hit me like how young he was, how scrappy and unhinged he kind of became. And we in the writing process, we discovered this during working with Jack and the team, that we really also deal with like the class issues of the time. Like, what does it mean to be, and we see this in modern society, what does it mean to be like, for lack of a better word in modern times, like a blind Trump supporter that's maybe on the more impoverished end, that needs something to believe in, versus someone of higher society that can afford to be on that end, and how they're perceived by the people around them. I found that to be a very fascinating take, putting that in the 1800s perspective.
I think one of the most interesting things about this show is how you see characters who are on the same side politically, but split in terms of class status, where it's like you have super wealthy people on the side of Booth, and then, significantly less wealthy, impoverished people on the side of Booth. And they're like aligned politically, but, and we see that a lot in our contemporary landscape too, on both sides, honestly. Like for Democrats, you see a lot of like celebrities, who are obviously super high status, like promoting Democratic politics. And, there are people who really need to benefit from progressivism, but their only spokespeople are people who don't need that level of help, and you see it on the Republican side as well, obviously, where it's like you have people who are living below the poverty line supporting like megalomillionaires, and I think that again, it's just, this show speaks to the ways, I think, in that like this country has literally not changed at all since 1860. Like it's crazy.
Wow. So what is it, and maybe this answer is different from each one of you, like what is it that you're hoping that audiences will walk away with after they see your show? Like, what's the message you want them to take home?
It's a great question. We're all like, huh? For me, I think I really want my audience to leave not necessarily comfortable or at peace with what they're gonna see. I think it's more so, I really love theater and just like media in general that pushes you to think about the other side of it and the what ifs. And you don't necessarily need to have all the answers, but I think our show will leave people really feeling like, oh wow, like there's a lot to this. It's not two-dimensional. It's not Lincoln good, Booth bad. It's every single gray nuance in between that. And I reference this so much when we talk to people, that a lot of these characters, for lack of a better word, had things like "I was there" on their tombstone, and that's all that they're being remembered for by whoever is remembering them, not the mass public by any means, obviously, because we didn't know about them. So I want people to leave being like, wait, how true was what I just saw? Because how do I not know about it? And I want people to really sit with that and sit with what our society deems worthy of being learned about. I think we live in an educational society where, education is power. And I think if we're not given all the facts as people that have people in charge, like the government and stuff, there's a control element there. And I think no one can take away what you know. And so I just think I hope it encourages people to really want to learn and seek information and expand their horizons in that sense, because we chose the Lincoln assassination, but there are a cajillion things that this country has gone through in the course of 300 years that we could pick out a single moment, like look at Shelley's show, picking out a single moment to highlight. And like, how much of that are we not doing? You know, history is often so written by a very, I think, male perspective of power, and we're not often getting the female perspective, the minority perspective. And I think our show does a good job of highlighting those perspectives as well. Whew, that was a lot. Sorry, guys. I got inspired.
No, that was good. That was great. Yeah, I hope I also hope, like, obviously second all that and like the historical nuance of this event. I also really hope that people leave, because I think what's cool about this show too is that it's so the characters are painted in such like relatable brushstrokes, you know, and I hope that people just like, because I think what's the psychology of reacting to tragedy is really interesting, and the way that these people blame each other and deflect and turn inward and turn outward is like so fascinating to me. And I think like we all deal with that in our personal lives, like either on a big grand political scale or like on an intimate interpersonal scale. And yeah, I hope people also see themselves reflected in that way, where, you know, you can see the universality of how people react in the face of like unimaginable horror. And I think Angelique and Matt and Nick did such a good job portraying that on the page. And yeah, I hope that it comes out in the performance and the, you know, the fully up on its feet version as well.
Yeah, I hope kind of along those same lines, I hope people just leave recognizing the human side of this otherwise really broad, or what's become such a broad story. And I just hope people leave curious. I hope people leave curious about this event. I hope people leave curious about other events, and go find something out, go dig, go, you know, get obsessed with something, get obsessed with, you know, a musician, get obsessed with a president or a historical event, and go research it, go dig, because there's so much information. Go to museums, go learn. And I think that's what I've really enjoyed about writing this show and being in this show, is that I just got to be a student again. And I love any opportunity that I really get to sit back in that desk and take notes and be a student and learn something that I thought I knew. And so I hope people see this show and they go, oh, you know, there's so much out there that we don't know about, things that we just think we hit the end of. And there's endless information. So get intrigued, get inspired, go learn.
I love it. Our American tragedy wants you to get obsessed. That's beautiful.
That's all we want.
Get obsessed.
So I think we're almost out of time. So the last thing I wanted to leave everybody with is, can you let people know where they can find out more about your show, how they can get tickets, all that kind of important stuff?
Yeah. They can find tickets, information, everything you need to know is going to be on the Hollywood Fringe website. That's hollywoodfringe.org. You could search us at Our American Tragedy. Tickets are on sale there. You can also follow our Instagram at Sunny Gingham. That's our Instagram. Facebook. Yeah, we're on Facebook as well. Show updates are always being posted there. Cool behind the scenes content.
Yeah.
So definitely give us a follow. And our performances, we have 4 more.
Depending on when this comes out, there's one on the 14th, which is Flag Day, and every ticket comes with one of these limited edition pins.
Oh, that's so
show
cute.
Pins.
I love it.
Beyond that, we have our After Dark show on Thursday the 20th at 11:30, which I believe you'll be making an appearance at, correct?
Yes, I think I remembered coming to the 3 p.m. one, but maybe I am coming to the 11:30.
We'll
I don't know.
See you at the matinee then.
Okay,
it's a surprise. You'll never know when Catherine shows up.
Guess you'll have to come to both to find out.
See, but that one we have some incentives that we're going to be dropping on Instagram as well, because we really want to pack the house, because 11:30 on a Thursday in LA is not easy, but it's going to be good. And then we have the 3 p.m. on the 22nd, and then we round it out with a 10:30 on the 29th, if I'm not mistaken.
Love it. Okay, so I'll get this up as quickly as possible so folks will have as many opportunities as they can to see the show. I am so excited to see it. thank you all for the hard work that you have done to bring this to life. And I wish many butts and seats for you.
Yay!
Yes,
Thank
thanks
you
so much
so
for
much. We're so
you.
excited to see
taking
you.
the time to chat. Thank you.
Absolutely. Well, everybody, thanks so much for tuning into this episode. And I will see you next time with more good music and theater stuff. Bye.